In the stillness of night, whispers echo where people no longer walk, where shadows remember what history forgot. These are the stories of the places where the veil thins. This is the truth behind the Haunting Podcast. In the heart of Amityville, New York, sits a house that has terrified generations, a place where reality and nightmare blur. Some say it holds the key to one of America's darkest legends. Others say it's all a lie. But one thing is certain. It all started with murder. November 13th, 1974. The tranquility of Ocean Avenue was shattered. Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. walked into a local bar and told the patrons, "I think my mother and father are shot." Hours later, police would discover a horrifying scene. 6 members of the DeFeo family, all shot dead. Parents, brothers, sisters, each found face down in their beds. No signs of struggle. No neighbors reported hearing the shots. Ronald Jr. was arrested. His story changed repeatedly. Demonic voices, mob connections, drugs, insanity. But one truth remained. He had pulled the trigger. The motive, unclear. The consequences, eternal. The house, now stained with tragedy, stood silent. Just over a year later, George and Kathy Lutz bought the house for $80,000. A bargain, 6 bedrooms, a boathouse, and a dark past. George, Kathy, and their 3 children moved in. They brought a priest to bless the house. He claimed to hear a voice say, "Get out."
I first met Father Ralph, which we came to know him as Father Ray, when I was in the process of obtaining an annulment from my first marriage. He and I became good friends.
I was blessing the sewing room. It was cold. It was really cold in there. And I thought, gee, this is peculiar, because it was a lovely day out. It was winter, yes, but it didn't account for that kind of coldness.
It wasn't until much later that we learned what it was that had happened to him while he was doing that. He did stop us before leaving and say to us that not to spend too much time in that sewing room. For some reason, he felt uncomfortable there.
I was sprinkling holy water, and I heard a rather deep voice behind me saying, "Get out." Get out. It seemed so directed toward me, I was really quite startled. I felt a slap at one point on the face. I felt somebody slap me, and there was nobody there.
What followed was a descent into chaos. George woke every night at 3:15 a.m., the supposed time of the DeFeo killings. Doors ripped off hinges. Walls oozed with a green slime. Flies gathered in winter. And then, there was Jody, a pig-like demon, with glowing red eyes that only their daughter Missy could see. After just 28 days, the Lutz family fled, left food in the fridge, clothes in the closets, pets behind. They never returned.
All homes have sounds that you need to come adjusted to. How the water sounds, a dishwasher in the middle of the night. There's sounds that all homes have. After the love of Christmas came down, that's when the sounds in the house were different. They weren't ones that I wanted to become familiar with. It changed. The children who had been anticipating a holiday were now anticipating different things that brought a fear onto their face.
We each saw things so drastically different than the person right next to us that it was very hard for us to communicate even as a family.
When I look back, sometimes I describe it like a 3-ring circus, each one being in their own room or their own area of the house, experiencing for themselves something different than what the other person was.
The story exploded. Skeptics called it fiction. Believers saw proof of the paranormal, but the Lutzes stood firm. Something evil lived there.
In letters to me from prison, DeFeo says it was he who was taken advantage of. Declares also that the Amityville Horror is a hoax, that it's all about money and industry. The convicted killer sent me documents purportedly showing that his lawyer was after lucrative book and movie deals and accuses him of starting what has become one of the greatest ghost stories of all time.
I didn't start it, that's for sure.
You contributed to it.
I contributed, absolutely.
After the Lutzes fled the house, Weber says he met with them to discuss a book idea about the DeFeo murders, not a ghost story.
We sat down and we talked. We had a nice evening conversation.
So this story evolved over dinner with the Lutzes and a bottle of wine.
I think it was about 3 bottles of wine. Yeah. Yes, about 3 bottles of wine.
So the story grew with each bottle of wine?
Each bottle became a better story.
The picturesque Dutch colonial home became the setting for an alleged haunting so disturbing it would terrify the world. And at the center of the investigation were Ed and Lorraine Warren. But what really happened inside 112 Ocean Avenue? Did the Warrens encounter true evil? Or did the Amityville case spiral into a storm of media hype, hoaxes and controversy? News of the haunting spread fast. That's when Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned paranormal investigators, were brought in. Known for their work on demonic hauntings, the Warrens agreed to examine the Amityville house in March of 1976. That night, the Warrens conducted a séance along with a team of psychics, a priest, and a news crew.
And when he asked us to go there because 6 members of a family were murdered, and then a little over a year later, another family moved in. And this family fled the house after 28 days. Well, of course, this interested both of us. So we went to the Amityville home. We met Marvin Scott with a camera crew. And we were supposed to meet George Lutz, who was going to let us in the house. But George wasn't there. And he made a phone call. And George Lutz said, "The closest I'll come to that house is 4 blocks away. I'll give you the keys at a pizza parlor nearby." We walked into that house, and it's my custom, Tony, to go down into the cellar, the lowest part of the house. These are usually the darkest areas. This is where evil thrives. This is where it survives. It hates God's light. It hates the sunlight. It hates any kind of light. So while Lorraine was walking up the stairs with the camera crew, I went down into the cellar. It was a huge place. We'll show pictures of it later. And as is my custom as a religious demonologist, I took out a crucifix, I held it up, and I commanded in the name of Jesus Christ and the blood of Christ what was there to reveal itself. It wasted no time. I never had such a quick reaction, Tony. I felt as though I was underneath a waterfall. That's how terrific the pressure was on my head and shoulders, forcing me down to the floor. Then I felt what I can only describe as hundreds of pinpoints of electricity hitting my body. And as though somebody had taken a hot towel and dropped it over my face, I couldn't breathe. I knew what was happening immediately. I felt it before, but not to that extent.
That I stood and could see all of these bodies all lined up.
Clear visually.
Clear visually, I could see that. That's where the DeFeos were prior to being taken out, to the morgue. And that was horribly disturbing. And I remember I took that relic, a Padre Pio, which no camera person knew I had, and I cupped it in my hands and I prayed, to him.
Right.
Now that is the room where the image of him, Padre Pio, it was picked up on film.
We probably have a slide of this.
Yeah, we're going to have a slide of it, Tom. Now at this point, I'm still on camera, so I'm not looking. I just think Ed is with me, that he is somehow behind the cameras and that he is there. And I start to go up the stairs. Never did I know that he went downstairs. I did not know that. I started to go up to the first landing where the great big window is. And as I did, it felt is if I was standing right under onrushing water and it bothers you. It's a pressure that's on your body to such a great extent.
What happens is that the atmosphere actually solidifies in homes like this. It's like trying to penetrate a wall of cement, really.
So I got up, I made it up to that landing, and again, I cupped that relic of Padre Pio and asked for his help, his guidance, and made it up the rest of the way. When I got up to the top of the stairs, remember, I'd never been in this home. I knew nothing about anything about it, nothing about the history at all, Tony. It was just another haunted house, except that we were on camera. I went to the left and went in this room. That was the sewing room.
Right.
And in that room, I looked at Marvin Scott, and he told me just a year ago that he will never forget what I said to him, and that is, I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get.
According to their accounts, several investigators experienced sudden nausea, headaches, and unexplained emotional reactions. Lorraine claimed to have connected with multiple spirits, including that of a young boy and a non-human entity that had attached itself to the property long before the DeFeos ever moved in. During the investigation, the Warrens' motion-triggered camera allegedly captured this, what appears to be a ghostly child peering from a bedroom doorway. Many believe it's the spirit of John DeFeo. Skeptics claim it was a crew member caught mid-blink. The Warrens concluded that the house was not merely haunted, but infested. They claimed it was the site of a demonic presence, which had manipulated Ronald DeFeo and tormented the Lutz family. The Warrens urged for an exorcism, though one was never officially sanctioned by the Catholic Church. Their warnings became the foundation for books, films, and decades of debate, but not everyone believed. Investigative journalist Stephen Kaplan accused the Lutzes of fabricating the story for fame. DeFeo's lawyer even claimed he and the Lutzes had concocted the haunting over drinks in hopes of securing a book deal. Despite the criticism, the Warrens always stood by their experiences. To them, Amityville was no story. It was one of the darkest cases they'd ever encountered.
Now, a lot of people out there have heard the Amityville Horror is a hoax. Why do you think that is? Because the atheists want you to think it's a hoax. They don't want anyone out there to believe for 1 second that a home like in Amityville could be haunted by diabolical forces, which it was. Their aim is to kill any belief that you have. Because if you believe that there's such a place as Amityville and a horror that was in that home, you might believe in a supernatural God. Right. They don't want that. No. You might believe in a devil. They don't want that either, because a skeptical public is the best protection that devils have. And devils do exist. Demons do exist. And 25 years ago, just like in Bridgeport, Connecticut, when we went in on the Lindley Street case, 966 Lindley, I offered a $3,000 reward to anybody, and I'm offering it again. Anybody out there that can come to me and prove, the first person comes to me and proves that the case on Lindley Street was a hoax, I'll give them $3,000. Anybody that can come to me, the first one comes to me and proves that there was a hoax committed by the Lutzes, ourselves, Prentice Hall, the priest, and anybody else in Amityville, I will give them $3,000. Nobody has ever come to collect that money.
In 1977, author Jay Anson published The Amityville Horror. It sold millions. The 1979 film terrified audiences, and soon Amityville became a franchise. Dozens of films, sequels, reboots, most had little connection to the truth, but the name sold, fear sold, fear. Behind the scenes, cracks formed. The Lutz family was accused of fabricating the story with a lawyer looking to profit. A lawsuit followed. Alleged confessions surfaced. Investigators pointed to inconsistencies, the lack of physical evidence, no previous paranormal reports. no activity since. Was the house haunted, or were the Lutzes haunted by the lingering trauma of living where 6 people had been murdered? Some believe the paranormal fed on emotional energy. Others believe stress, financial strain, and suggestion created a powerful illusion. Sometimes fear itself is the haunting.
William Weber at no time intimated that the Amityville case was a hoax. He was not committed to parapsychology, but he told me more than once that he was fully convinced that the possession theory was the most likely. If he has said that he thought it was a fraud, well, he has his reasons for it. I don't know what they are, but it's not true.
Let's pursue the theory that, in fact, the Lutzes had this grand master scheme, that they were going to come in, create a haunted house story. First of all, they left their whole investment, their life savings, was wrapped up in this house. There have been lots of haunted house stories throughout the ages, but you don't know which ones are going to take off and capture the public's imagination. The odds would be against them making a lot of money off of a haunted house.
The thing is this, that if you're going to create a hoax, you're going to make sure that you get your share of the money. Now remember that George and Kathy made some money, but they didn't make the money that the producers and Jay Anson made. They became wealthy. George and Kathy never did.
The real horror of that house was, number one, the horrible murders that took place, and number two, the subsequent harassment of all the owners that tried to live there and live a normal life.
Let me ask you a question. 6 people were murdered in that house. 5 people were driven out of there 28 days after they lived there. Would you live in that house?
No subsequent owners have reported hauntings. The house was remodeled, its address changed, but the legend lives on. George and Kathy passed away still claiming their story was true. Ronald DeFeo died in prison in 2021. The Amityville story reshaped horror. It inspired generations of books, films, memes, and investigations. But the debate remains. Is it America's greatest ghost story, or just its most profitable? Thanks for joining us on the Truth Behind the Haunting podcast. If you enjoyed our journey into the supernatural, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow ghost seekers. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and stay aware of what moves in the shadows.